全日本の方は、だんだんナギナタが国際化していって、試合にこだわって勝ち負けにこだわるような方向に進むのは良くないので、ナギナタの理念に基づいた型を作るようになりました。
Kimura-sensei has just said that the reason that the Naginata kata were created was because as Naginata became popular as a sport, many aspects of the traditional usage or the traditions of the Naginata were starting to be lost. And so the Naginata kata was created as a way of preserving traditional techniques and the knowledge that was sort of being put by the wayside with enthusiasm for competition.
多くの古武道の先生方のご意見も伺いながら、1976年に全日本の型ができました。
So the Zen Nihon Kata was completed in 1976, and it was a process that involved asking a lot of masters from classical koryu traditions to come together and give their input about what aspects of Naginata should be preserved in this new kata.
真剣を使わずに真剣を持ったような気持ちで、樫の木でのナギナタ同士の型7本です。
So there are 7 forms, and they are performed using a wooden naginata. It's not shinkan, it's not a real naginata with a real blade, but the kata is supposed to be performed with an attitude that you are using a real naginata.
で、学ぶ意義はやはり、全日本ナギナタの型を通じて型の一つ一つに込められた先輩の先生方の魂を汲み取り、伝統文化のあるナギナタの灯火を燃やし続けられるようにという願いがあります。
Okay, so in line with that, the reason why we do the Naginata kata and the reason why it's really for advanced practitioners is because it's through the Naginata we are able to access a kind of a more traditional, almost spiritual aspect of the art form, of the discipline. The ancient wisdom that maybe is not so obvious with normal competitive Naginata is contained within each one of the kata forms. And so it's taking Naginata practice and understanding of the philosophical, theoretical aspects to a higher level. That's the point of doing this, of doing the kata.
全日本の方はナギナタの全部を使います。ハブの部分、柄の部分、石突きの部分、思う存分ナギナタを全部使ってお稽古をしていきましょう。
So with the kata, every part of the Naginata comes into play, from the ha to the air to the ishizuki. Every bit of the shape of the Naginata is an important factor in how each one of the techniques and the forms is demonstrated. So let's keep that in mind. I'd like to just point out that the Zen Nihon Kata is only supposed to be practiced by senior practitioners, Sandan and above. It only becomes a component of Dan examinations from Yondan. If you're an absolute beginner in kata, just don't get too carried away. So there are many things in the Zen Nihon Kata that are not used or seen in Shikakeoji. And so I'll just show you a few of, if you're doing kata for the first time, this will all be new to you. So we'll show you a few of the characteristic movements in the kata that you probably haven't seen before. So for example, if you have never done kata before, you would never have done this position or stance. This is called mugamai. Also, another target that is aimed for in a few of the forms in the kata is the suigetsu, which is the solar plexus. So it's that soft bit just under the rib cage. Okay, and the person that makes the first move is not shikake, it's uchi. In the kata, we call them uchi. Usually, the person who takes on the role of uchi is the senior practitioner. So uchi is, if we're talking about shikake oji, would be the shikake role. And the person who would be the oji role in shikake oji in kata is called shi. And shi always wins in the end. Now let's look at the characteristic Reiho. Both uchi and shi are in, they face each other in mugamae. Two steps in. So both of them assume the chudan stance, and you can see there is a gap or space between the tips of the naginata. It's about 20 centimeters. Pulling the front foot back. We sit down with the left knee on the floor. The naginata, as you can see, is parallel with the floor. It's level. Turning the blade, you bow to each other from that seated position. Bringing the back foot up, both stand up together. And moving back to the original positions. This is called orishiki no re. Orishiki no re. This is the way in which the Reiho is performed in the kata. So the tachi no mae, that's the distance between the two practitioners. In shikake oji, it's 4 meters. 4 meters, but with kata, it's 6 meters. Okay, let's start with the Reiho. Ippon compared to all of the naginata techniques that you would have done until now is completely different. Okay, it's a new dimension of naginata, and it's probably really difficult the first time. It's all about getting in sync with your partner, in sync with your breathing and your distance, okay, and your rhythm. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So it's quite challenging for the first time. So Uchi starts off by trying to thrust at Shi's solar plexus. And Shi then receives that thrust in a movement that's called nayasu. So what that is, it's kind of, this is a really hard word to explain. Nayasu is the tsuki's coming in, they're bringing it, and then pang, throwing it down. Okay, so you're kind of absorbing it, absorbing the thrust and then deflecting it at the last moment, and then counter-attacking with a thrust to the throat. Let's do it slowly.
立ち回りから2歩出て、内回りというちょうど、打つのに適当な間合いのところに、入ります。これが内回りです。
This position here, from the tachi maai, from the distance you're apart, taking 2 steps in, you should end up in this position, which is the uchi maai, okay, which is the striking distance. And uchi must aim properly to try and thrust at Shi's solar plexus. That's the only thing you have in your mind, is aiming for the solar plexus. So it's really important that when you thrust, when Uchi does the thrust, the blade should be facing down. And it changes, the blade changes right at the last moment. And that's when she does the nayas and the deflection. So when the nayasu bit happens, both of the blades end up facing the same way. And then from that position, it's just a matter of stepping in and extending to thrust to the throat. As I said before, Uchi is usually the senior practitioner. So it's really important for Uchi to execute the technique properly for the kata to work. If because you know you're going to be nayasu, then you sort of preempt that and you don't thrust properly, then it won't work. So it's really important that Uchi does their job properly. So Uchi will go to thrust first, and the blades are facing down. Okay, but as soon at the end of that thrust, that's when the blades are turned and they're deflected. Okay, and both the blades at this point here are facing out to the side. So the important point is from here, both blades are facing down, and right at the very end of that, that's when they turn and come down. Okay, and then from this position, just let's do it one more time at normal speed.
1本目。
So Uchi takes hasso, Shi takes gedan, and in the Kamae position, we move into the striking distance. From hasso, Uchi strikes sokumen. That's the target that you're aiming for. Okay, so Shi deflects with harai using the strike to sokumen. And Uchi uses the momentum from that deflection to let the naginata go overhead, and just as she moves her foot up to strike again, that is when she finishes by cutting through door. So we're actually with the door, because we're striking and we're sitting down as we cut. The movements, it comes down on an angle as your body's going down. ちょっと払ってその足のところですね。So here we have the harai, using momentum, back foot up, and then down. Kneecap, okay, is not pointing over there or over here, but the knees of Uchi and Shi are pointing together on the same line. So you can see they're on the same line at the moment.
払って胴で少し斜めになります。
はい、and it's slightly on a diagonal, but with the knees in the same line. This is a bad example because what's happened is as the naginata is being flung overhead, the back foot's coming up too early. So we want you to hold the back foot. じゃあいいでお願いします。Hold it, and then bring it up. Okay, can you see the difference? Bad example. Okay, and good example. Okay, so notice the difference here in the way the foot is used. This is really important. So both Uchi and Shi strike sune at the same time, aizune, but only Uchi does hasse. Only Uchi shouts out sune. Shi does not say anything. So this movement is called maki age. So we're using the sori of the blade to lift Uchi's naginata straight up. So this is actually a straight movement, and that will create the opening to strike kote. So we'll just show you a close-up of the movement of the naginata to execute makiage. So both have attempted to strike sune at the same time. So the monouchi and the monouchi are together here in the middle, okay? But one side is not stronger than the other. They're both even. We can see that the blades actually the blade is against blade here. Okay, so they're both on the cutting angle. Okay, and from here, she turns the blade so that the shinogi comes onto the cutting edge of uchi. So just do it again from here. It's just turning and bringing the shinogi, the side of the blade, onto the cutting edge of uchi. Okay, and then using the backhand from here. So once the shinogi is on the side, Uchi's blade or naginata is staying on exactly the same angle. Then we're using the backhand and putting our body forward to create the opening to strike kote. So the really important point for sanbonme is this makiage, this using the naginata to create that opening. It's yonhonme for kata is in some ways similar to 6本目 in 仕掛け落ち。
4本目。志だけが開き足ですねを打ったので、志だけが元へ戻ります。
その部分ちょっと見せましょうか。はい、
そこで今ので、はい。
So as you can see, she has moved in quite a lot to strike sune. So it's only she that moves back after striking to get back to the original position. Okay, so you can see we've gone out on a slight diagonal from the straight line and then back with zanshin. And it's aichudan. And it's only she that goes back because it's only she that's moved from that position. Okay, so Kimura-sensei said she should have explained this to start with, but because we're using a wooden naginata, it's actually heavier than a shiai naginata. So that means that the place that we hold the naginata to get that sense of balance and equilibrium is slightly different to a shiai naginata. And so with a shiai naginata, we would hold with the backhand a forearm away from the ishizuki, right? Like that. But with the kata naginata, it's heavier. So we're actually holding it about one fist further in. So that's one difference with this, what we normally do with the shiai naginata, with the kamae. So with the mugamae, we take mugamae from shizentai. Okay, bring our left hand across, and so our left hand ends up on our hip and across our solar plexus. Okay, so that's the position of our left hand. So we bring our right hand down the blade is not perfectly to the side, but because we've put our hand, right hand down, just that little bit of a squeeze with the right hand means that the blade goes up slightly. So it's hard to see, but it's not directly up to the side, it's slightly angled up because of the way that you hold it with the right hand. You're sort of turning it in a little bit. The monouchi of the blade should be in the center of the body. So this is mugamae. Okay, into chudan, we just swap hands, and on the side, point here is the back hand is not over the thigh, but is actually on the body line. Okay, so just sort of like just touching the hakama. So the kisaki is aiming for a position just above the hakama line. Okay, so in the, well, as you can see the angle here. I was going to say, is that the navel, or everybody's bodies are different, right? So I can't really pinpoint the body, but it's at this height, it's just above the hakama line, and it's slightly lower actually than what the kamae would be in shikake-oji. So this would be shikake-oji. We can see the hand is over the thigh now, and the kisaki has gone up a little bit. Okay, but with the kata, we're pulling it back like this. Okay, back a little bit, which is why the kisaki goes down lower, and the hand is not on the thigh, but just touching the side. So probably of all the kamae, the one that you can see the most difference between this and shikake-oji is chudan. Okay, so with gedan, again, the monouchi is, the blade is in the center of the body. The ishizuki, hand, okay, more than the shiai naginata, has a little bit more left over at the top, okay? So that's just one slight difference between when you're using a shiai naginata and using a kata naginata. Hasso is pretty much the same. Okay, so again, you've got the ishizuki guarding the center of the body. Compared to with a shiai naginata, it's pretty much the same. There's not much difference. Wakigamae is also the same, guarding the center of the body, and the hands, the width. Okay, so the hands are pretty much the same, regardless of whether you're using a shiai naginata and shikake-oji or kata. The point is that the ishizuki and the, what do you call it, the monouchi of the e is brought into the center of your body. So essentially it's the same, maybe slight millimeter difference here and there, but it's what you're attempting to do is exactly the same. Exactly the same with jodan. So the monouchi is in the center. So that's all of the kamae. You can see that apart from chudan, most of them are pretty much the same as what is if you were using a shiai naginata, but chudan, there's definitely some marked differences there that you've got to keep in mind. Ouch. So with shikake-oji, usually strike after you've done the harai, there's stop, there's a pause, and then you finish off with whatever technique it is. But with the kata, it doesn't stop at all, it continues moving. So we're doing the uchi-otoshi before it reaches the target. It's a little bit hard to see perhaps. Okay, so we're looking at the timing and the movement of the naginata. So it's not a harai out to the side. It's coming from above down. The harai is coming from above. Watch again. It's not, so the man's coming here. It's not hitting it out to the side. It's hitting it down. So you can tell whether it's a good technique or not by the sound. It should be a clean sound rather than ga, ga. So ping. Okay, so the really important point for Gohonme is the Uchi-otoshi, which Kimura-sensei just explained. Okay, so that's one of the key features of this form that you have to really be able to do properly.
Nice.
In the examination up to Yondan, okay, you have to do 5 kata. And then after the 5 kata, so from number 6, we start seeing again another a kind of a new dimension in the kata with lots of new techniques and skills that you have to learn. So first from Mugamai, you have to catch the tsuki. Okay, so you can see that we've the tsuki has been received by Shi with the blade, both blades perfectly to the side. Okay, they're going in the same direction to the side. This is the hard bit. Look at the angle of the blades. It's easier to see it than try and explain it, but just look at how stop position that we're in now, okay? And then from here, we're sort of hooking it from underneath, bang. So that's the movement. So using the curvature of the blade. So if you were to look from above, the mine, which is the back part, the opposite of the blade, is hooked into the cutting edge of Uchi's naginata. Okay, now the naginata, Uchi's naginata is completely resting on the mine, which is the back edge of the naginata. Okay, and from there it's flicked up. So it's very subtle movement, but very important to get that subtlety right using the whole side of the blade. So it's got to be done, it's not with power, it's got to be done technically with perfection. And if it is done that way, lifting up both people without making any effort will be able to go back into Jordan. So it's got to be in the middle as well. So it's not using a lot of strength, it's using that twisting up, and by lifting up, both people naturally go into Jordan. There's also another technique in here, uke nagashi. She originally had her head here, and then she moves out the way and receives the strike to man with the blade of the naginata. So the blade of the naginata is where her head was. Now she has moved in a diagonal. using that momentum to do furikaeshi and then striking that.
今度縦に行ってみましょう。はい。
Back on a diagonal, and then Uchi will come straight back, whereas Shi will come around. So look at the first movement, the kesa cut, which is the diagonal cut from the front. So it's a slight hirakiashi as you're cutting down on a diagonal. So again, this is the uchi move. Okay, see the slight hiraki movement? So diagonal forward. So against that kesa movement, this is what shi does. So it's sort of what you're covering here is the cut at your shoulder. You're protecting your shoulder from the downward movement or the downward cut that Uchi is doing. The Uchi, after doing the kesa cut, okay, the wrist is exposed. And so against the wrist, shi will then do a kuruma, or a cut from underneath to try and cut the wrist. And in response to that, this is how Uchi, receives.
Right.
So the point here is you're not doing using the naginata to block as such as the cutting, but the reason why it misses is because you're moving back. So watch the timing of moving back. And that's why it doesn't connect. We don't want to leave the naginata too high. It's got to go down flat, level, like this. And that is how you are able to suppress the cut that's coming from below. So again, with this kata form, these are new techniques for everybody. Okay, if you haven't done it before, so it's very difficult and requires a lot of practice. So after we've blocked the upward kote, she strikes man. It is blocked with the middle of the a by Uchi. So what we're trying to demonstrate here. Okay, we struck man. Okay, man. If you go too quickly for the sune, if you don't go too quickly, there's still power in the man strike, and it's going to go down and hit man. So man, okay, and then when the power just recedes a little bit, that's when you go down for the sune. So in other words, don't be too quick, don't be too hasty from the uchi side to strike sune. Okay, so we've blocked the sune, and then we're going to lift up. The way we lift it up is, we don't use this hand. No, it's this hand here. Okay, the top hand, we bring that down. And that will give us the power to lift the naginata up. Okay, you can't see it from the side, but we've lifted it up. This is not in the middle of the body. This is slightly to the left. So it's off your body line, not in the middle. Okay, if it's in the middle, like this, then that's actually quite dangerous. So it's just slightly off center. And then harai down from above. And then we strike sune with kuri dashi, which means that you are moving the naginata out. Watch this hand movement. See the connection with the naginata on the air. This position doesn't change. It stays here the whole time as we do the lifting up. It doesn't move. Stays same point, and down on the same point. Okay, so 6本目、7本目 are really, really complicated. So when we finish 7本目, that's where we do orishiki there again, just like we did at the start. So that's the third International Naginata Federation Zoom seminar that we have conducted here at the Shubukan Dojo in Itami City. I'd like to thank all of the ladies for their cooperation and their wonderful demonstrations of the techniques over the last 3 sessions. So Sensei's saying thank you. Again, I think we've managed to go through, the main points for the Kihon, for the Shikaki-oji, and for the Kata, and just to reconfirm some of the things that we have to take care of. So well done, everybody. Also, I should add, please, if you've got any feedback or you think these sessions were worthwhile, we can certainly plan ahead and do some more in the future, because to be honest, things aren't getting better at the moment, are they really? So we want to keep in touch with everybody and keep everybody enthusiastic. So if any feedback would be much appreciated. ありがとうございました。